everybody. Welcome to the Chelsea Skidmore Show. I have my baby Gia in the background. She's being a little songbird right now, and she's hiccuping at the same time. But I am here. I want to make my intro for the episode from home and just check in. But, you know, it's a little noisy over here. We have Jagger the bulldog in the background chewing on toys. We have Gia looking at me like, what is a microphone? It's a big morning over here at the Randolph house. This episode today is super fun. I have Phyllis Katz on, who is my teacher at the Groundlings, which is a really awesome improv and sketch comedy school, theater, and it's an institution in Los Angeles. Phyllis is an actor, writer, improv teacher, and coach who was also an early member and founder of the school as well. And she's just incredible. She's gorgeous. She's hilarious and incredibly talented. It's so funny. She went into an impression just when talking about characters and just did like a little character impression. And the second she did it, she just like morphs into this other person. And it's just so incredible to watch. And, she's so talented, and I was so grateful she came on the podcast just to talk about improv. And I had actually moved out to Los Angeles wanting to go through the Groundlings track. I did UCB initially in New York in 2011, and then I had heard about the Groundlings. I really wanted to do it, and I was like, okay, well, I should live in LA if I'm going to do it. So I came out, I auditioned, I got in. So then I went home and moved out here, and Groundlings has different levels. There's basic, intermediate. I think they've added, then there's advanced, and then maybe there's like a second advanced, and then writer's lab. I know that they've added a couple of levels, and I don't know what they are, excuse me. But I did basic twice, and then I did intermediate, which I passed, and then I did not continue on, and I chose to focus instead on stand-up because I just felt like I had to do one or the other. Groundlings is really fun. It's really, you're so encouraged to be big and silly and super open, and I was finding my stand-up voice at the same time, which I felt like was a lot more dry and like honestly a little closed off. So it just felt so like it just felt like two completely polar opposite personalities and just ways I was performing on stage, and I kind of just felt like I wanted to focus on stand-up and get really good at that. Not that I couldn't do both, but I just felt like if you're going to do anything great, you should focus on one. At least that's how it felt at the time. So went on to stand up and continued to go to Groundling shows, which are so amazing. And you should definitely check them out. My personal favorites are the ones on Wednesday and Thursday night, which I think is the Crazy Uncle Joe show and Cooking with Gas. But again, it's been a couple years, but check it out if you're in LA. Check out the school. It's super fun. They're still going right now. I believe they're back to in person. And just enjoy my episode with Phyllis Katz, and I will see you next week. I think that's also something interesting to talk about, just how awkward those headshot photos can be. Right. Like it's so uncomfortable and so rehearsed and so fake that it's like incredible that some people even get good headshots to begin with.
Right. Well, Rob really takes you through and stuff like that. You know, what he does is with actors, especially he asks first, but he jumps you through lots of scenarios and stuff because he said the first X amount of pictures 100% of the time they're useless because you haven't warmed up yet.
Right, yeah.
So he just gets you through all that, and then you come back.
Totally.
And it's I'll send you some stuff. You can
yeah.
I'm not trying to like.
No, not at all. Also, just make sure you talk into the.
Oh, I didn't know we were on.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
But we can also.
Okay.
It's fun to just bullshit into it.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's really just a relaxed.
Okay.
And we can cut into it and then start.
Great.
Okay. But yeah, no, absolutely. I've noticed that the headshot sessions that I've done that felt more like everyone's making it a bigger deal with like the hair and the makeup and the outfits versus like the casual guy that a friend referred that's just like at his place with like a backdrop. Those are always the better ones because I feel for me personally, I'm more comfortable in a setting like that.
Well, it depends. I think it's the guy who's making you comfortable. It's the photographer. No matter where he is in a studio, you have much better control over the lighting. And I say like the expert, but it is what Rob says.
Yeah. I'm curious about how that translates into teaching in terms of making the person you're working with comfortable. As being a teacher at the Groundlings and like wanting to, like, I don't know if it's your job to get the best out of the student or their job to bring their best. You know what I mean? Like in terms of like creating that like comfortable atmosphere because it's really like a space to be super silly and just let go and like, yeah. How do you set the tone for a class to start that?
Well, I'm clear on what I'm supposed to get across to them. And then other things wind up getting across to them in addition and get across to me because it's a human interaction always. But I think for improv, I think for any learning, you want to create a space that's conducive to learning. The trick is that everybody learns differently. And some people in an improv class, they're really taking in their information primarily through their ears, so they try to be really funny and brilliant. And then some people take it through their eyes, and they'll be doing the space work and setting things, and their characters will be very visual. And some people do it through their gut. And so the idea is to bring all of that up, bring the percentages of all of those.
Oh, that's so interesting.
In place.
Yeah, that's amazing. And especially like how many students are in each class?
Well,
that's a lot per person too.
Yeah, I think we're capping now at 14. And on Zoom it was 12.
Yeah.
But we were capping at 14. And sometimes you have fewer, but you don't have more. And it's often there's a vibe in the room, just like a workplace. Any place you are, a party, anything, there's a vibe in the room. So if the vibe is tense, then you want to loosen things up. And ideally, you're trying to, let me think about this. I'm trying to make sure that they have their creative expression intact. I want people to be able to find their own voices instead of try to figure out what it is, quote unquote, I want from them. You know?
I love that. That's so important. Yeah, I've been to an acting school I won't name, but what they would do is that you would do the scene and then the teachers would do it the way that you should do it in the style of how they teach. And for me, I was like, well, I'm never learning like how to figure it out. You know, like I'm not learning how to interpret. I'm learning how to just mimic what you're teaching. So that's so important to really like let the student grow and find their voice and to pump that up.
The teachers perform it the way they want you to do it?
Yeah, like they'll be like, no, like hit it like this and this and like it's like this is the way that the scene is done. Like let's see your version, but then we'll show you and now let's see that. Great.
Oh, well, that wouldn't work for me. That's how I'll respond to that. That would not work for me either.
How long have you been with the Groundlings?
I got there, I think about 2 years into it. I'm considered a founder because I'm one of the founders of the school and I'm one of the founders of the Melrose Theater. They were at the Oxford Theater when I joined. And so it was, I want to say 76, something like that, 75, 76.
I bet that was such an amazing time to be there. I mean, especially from the beginning, because you've seen everything and so many people come in and out. So who was there during that time? of like notable?
When I first started?
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying. Well, I mean, I remember the people who were there.
Yeah.
The Paul Rubens era came a little bit later. He came later in the 70s. Paul and Phil Hartman. But I've seen so many great people there that aren't famous and that you don't know, that are so wonderfully brilliant and talented in the school through the doors there. So to pick people out is tough, but they were all around. I mean, J.J. Abrams was one of my students. He was in the advanced class that I taught there. Julia Sweeney, and all of them who came through any time from then on. Lorraine was there the first night I saw the show, and one of the reasons I wanted to join.
Yeah. Was she on SNL then?
No, it was minutes before she got on SNL.
Yeah.
I saw the show, and all these women kept coming out doing characters who weren't the prop in the scene to say, "Hi, honey, I'll fix your dinner," and it blew me away.
Something different.
Yeah, I mean, I had certainly worked. I grew up in Chicago, and I first took classes at Second City, and that was great fun too. That was just wonderful. And I worked in groups there and moved out here with a group of friends. And in fact, we were working here at the Comedy Store.
Oh.
Mitzi would have us open or close a set because we were different, because we were a group. And we did all those different characters. We did those different things. But here was a group where it was really embraced. And I said, oh, I want to be there.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know that they ever did improv here or allowed more characters.
We didn't do improv.
Oh,
we did a set of written sketches.
Oh, got it. Okay. But even that, I didn't know that. I mean, I know like that there was more experimental sort of
the whole
comedy
time was more experimental.
Then versus, okay. Versus obviously like what today is like if someone's just doing like a setup punch or storytelling. Like back then it was much more like you'll have like a weird instrument on stage or like, right?
And well, there's still that stuff going on, but it goes through cycles. Goes through cycles. Everything, maybe it was just exciting to me because I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
But it was really an exciting time. There wasn't something you had to imitate. You just did a send-up of everything you grew up with, and we made fun of ourselves and each other, and everybody took it well, and there was no ill intent. I don't mean that everybody did that, but I'm just saying it was less careful, and there are pluses and minuses to that, right? Because we're finding out, but it was an experimental time. We would just show up and have class and just see what happened. And then that would turn into material. And we'd go off and write. And then we'd start bringing things in. It was wonderful.
So did Second City, did that exist in L.A.? Because I know that there was a Second City. Is there still?
That was later.
Later, okay.
And it's still in L.A., but I believe. But that was later. This was Second City in Chicago. But what I'm talking about is the Groundlings. I got out here.
So then I guess my question was Groundlings the only, how did you end up from Second City to the Groundlings? Was that the only improv school in California? Had you heard about it in Chicago? Because it was only 2 years of existence. So how had you heard about it? And
took classes at Second City in Chicago. I'd seen them on my prom night.
Oh, wow. That's so fun.
And then a few years later, I was in classes there. And about, I think, 5 of us moved out here. And we wanted to be writers and actors. And one of them had been taken to see the Groundlings. And it was at the Oxford Theater, which sat, 35 people, something like that. There were more people on stage than in the audience. And my friend Bill Steinkellner and I went to see it. He was in the group with us the same night. And we just went up to Gary Austin afterwards and said, do you have any classes? We weren't even thinking one way or the other about getting in the show. We
Yeah.
just wanted to work out someplace that seemed exciting because that's what you did in Chicago. Chicago had a million places to work out. Second City was the only game in town in terms of a company to be in like that that was doing improv. But you could find a place to put up a show while you were working on your stuff and working out, and people would show up. Everybody supported all that theater. So Gary said, yeah, you need to fill out an application. It's so hard to get in the Groundlings now. And that's
back then, was it?
We filled out an application to get into the, because there wasn't a school. It was
so what was it like then?
classes. There was a basic class, and then gradually you'd keep learning things in that class, and then at some point he'd put you in the performance class, the people doing the shows.
Oh, so it was just a basic level and then the Okay.
Yeah. And so he said, clearly you're experienced improvisers. I'd like you to learn our vocabulary. And we said, fine, we don't care. And it was something like 2 months later, he put us in the other class and put us, he put us in the show. And there were things you'd be put in the show at the beginning just to get your sea legs. And it was just so much fun. And still is.
How different were the shows back then versus today?
Well, I think some of it was way more vaudeville. I mean, that's in quotes. It was, you have to think of what the zeitgeist was then and what our parents' generation was like then. If you watch any of the old SCTV stuff, that really spoke for me in a lot of ways. The stuff they made fun of, that was the same kind of stuff we did, the satire they did. We also did things that were more stage sketch oriented. They're not going to do the scene of I'm coming home for dinner and this is going on in our relationship. It was a different kind of a show. They were doing a takeoff of a network in Canada. But so there was some stuff that was more broad, but then there were some of us who didn't normally do broad stuff, and whatever you brought to the party started to work its way in. So that was really nice. There was no place within the organization then that was saying this is what we're looking for or this is what you need to do. Again, pluses and minuses, right?
Yeah.
But we just each brought something, and then we would just start mixing and matching. And I learned to take it some notches up when I needed to. Other people took it notches down. We had a lot of music in the show. A lot of musical improv in the show. We were known for it for a while.
Which is one of your specialties.
One of
right?
them, yeah. Thanks. That I love it. I can't say enough about how soul fulfilling it is, and anxiety producing it is.
Totally. I know. I remember I was like, I want to sign up for one of those. I don't know if it was a WOW or what it would be called.
Yeah.
Wow. But then I was like, I'm too nervous.
Oh, no, you should do it. I'm probably going to start, not at the theater, but at my private ones again.
Yeah.
I think people are ready to be in the room to do that.
Yeah. I'm curious how it was with working with students on Zoom versus in person, because I do obviously think that, yes, there is so much more magic in person. Yeah, just like what that was like. A friend of mine took Meisner on Zoom, and I felt bad for her. 'Cause I'm like, you really should be across from someone in the room for that.
Yeah, well, sometimes you have to think of it like a self-tape, or if you're on a set and you're working with someone who doesn't stick around to give you your lines, and you just have to bring it up anyway. First of all, in terms of musical improv, I refused to do it online. I just wouldn't do. And I had 2 classes running then, a Wednesday night and a Sunday day. And one of them had 1 class to go. One of them had 3 to go. I still owe it to them. And they've all chosen to wait. And so I'm getting ready to do that again. As for the other stuff, the Groundlings was saying, well, we have to figure out how to stay afloat here. What are we going to do? So we were pitching classes, and I was teaching character monologues, writing classes, things I felt would work online. And other people were doing the same kind of thing. And then they started teaching some of the core classes online, and they asked if I would do one. And I said, how is that going to work? And they said, well, 2 people have done it already, and they liked it. So I contacted them. And some of the things, games didn't translate at all. They redid the syllabi to adjust.
Yeah.
I was surprised that it went as well as it did. I would say we got about 70% there. I would like to give people 100% of what we have to offer, but one of the benefits was we have people from all over the world and all over the country who can't afford to come here or don't know if they want to do this yet, or for one reason or another are not in a position to be here and want to study with us.
Yeah.
So that worked out extremely well. And the biggest thing I learned from teaching on Zoom during the pandemic was that it was not so much about whatever they were taking the class for. It was about keeping each other up. Because
that's nice.
I had one class, there was a woman in the class from somewhere in the Midwest, and she asked if she could talk to me after class. And she explained to me, I don't want to give too much away because I don't have her permission, but she explained to me that she was sometimes going to be on and off camera, and she didn't want me to feel disrespected, but she was at a workplace, and she couldn't do this from home. And long story short, when the class was over, I got an email from her saying, improv saved my life. I've had a very bad several months. Everybody was so welcoming. I felt like I belonged somewhere. And I just cried my eyes out when I read that and said, here I was, so arrogant. I don't think I should teach this on Zoom. I don't know what they're not going to. They got plenty out of it because we have something to teach. Is it better being in the room? Absolutely. Absolutely. You've got the energy. You're really looking into somebody's eyes. But, we're people. We adapt. We adjust.
That's amazing. Yeah, I actually moved to LA because I wanted to go through the track. I didn't end up staying, but I was like, if I want to do it, and, I was excited by the Groundlings. So, so it's great that you had it on Zoom then when you think of it that way, because I'm sure there are so many people who from all over want to be out here doing it, because everyone hears about the Groundlings.
So many of them were from Australia and London and other places in England too. We just had people from all over the world, and it was really fun because they bring a whole other perspective. It's a different kind of diversity than what we talk about most of the time. But this is what I love about diversity in general: is you want to mix the people in the room, not just to hear their stories alone, but to see what stories you make together. It's just it's exciting.
Yeah, I love that, and it's so interesting that Groundlings was, would you say, the original improv school, and now one of the only standing ones?
You mean in LA?
Yeah.
Well, UCB just opened again.
Oh, it did. Okay. But besides UCB, so many have gone down, and Groundlings has continued to stay and expand.
Yes, I think that I don't know what all the circumstances were with the other schools, but I think some of them just at that point had been doing it a long time and just said, this happened, this is going on, it's difficult enough. Life is difficult enough right now for people, and just said, okay, I think this is the time I'm going to hang it up. I don't know if it's because there was horrible mismanagement. I wouldn't say if I did know that, but I wouldn't lie. I think there's benefit to not being the only ones, and I think there's benefit to all of us acknowledging and supporting each other to keep an artistic community alive.
If you were going to describe Groundlings to the listeners, how would you describe it as an improv school, or like what the focus is?
The focus is on character-based improv and scenes. It's where characters drive it, where it's not just I'm always myself, and I'm going to I'm cerebrally going to figure out how to do this. That doesn't mean it doesn't include it, but there are characters behind it, which is not to say that we arrogantly think that's the best way to do improv. It's not.
It's just the style of the school.
It's the style that emerged, and even that style morphs a lot. You'll see some, you'll go through 5 years where it seems like it's a wig festival, and then another 5 years where you're saying, oh my gosh, there's a lot of social commentary going on underneath these characters. It just keeps, and I shouldn't even say years. From person to person, people gravitate toward different things.
How do you best guide? Because I'm sure as a teacher, you see people come in and they're like, I'm going to be funny. I'm going to act funny. It's like, or they're too much in their head, cerebral, like trying to make the joke instead of just like doing something more authentic. Like what's like the nicest way to steer them out of that? Or do you just let them do their thing?
No, we on day 2 of our basic class, we talk about some do's and don'ts.
Oh, okay. Can you go over some of those?
Well, one of the you should sign up for class, but
sorry.
yeah,
Whatever
no, that's
you
right.
feel.
No, of course. A lot of things that you would learn also at other schools, but we go into the idea of certainly not denying people on stage and what that means and all the incarnations.
Would that be like a yes and?
Yes, but it's denial is so many things. But I think of denial as anything that keeps the scene from moving forward. You stop a scene from moving forward because you got a funny one-liner and it has nothing to do with what the other person just said. To me, that's a denial. Denial is obviously somebody saying, "Mom, let's." I have practice in 10 minutes, and she says, "I'm not your mother." That's the classic thing. But we talk about a lot of things, and one of them is don't go for joke. Don't try to be funny. Let your sense of humor come through. So there's a lot of over-the-top kinds of stuff that you do in the beginning to get your commitment level up, and then you pull back on it.
That's another thing that I feel like is for me, what I think is like one of the most important things is commitment. It's,
in life.
Yeah, in life. But like, especially at the Groundlings, like I remember just Tony always like yelling at me, like, commit, like just staying in it. Like, talk to me about just how important commitment is.
Well, how important is commitment, let's say, for example, in your marriage?
Right.
And how often is commitment in a friendship? I mean, how often, how important is it in a friendship? You need to commit in a scene, which means commit to the belief that this is true, that this is really happening. This scene is really happening. An actor has to do the same thing, not just an improviser. You're hanging your scene partner out to dry if you don't commit, and the person who gave you the suggestion if it's an improv. But you're hanging somebody out to dry. Excuse me, if you don't commit. And I'll tell students that when something isn't going the way you want it to in life, the first thing that takes a hit is your energy. And so you want to stay committed. It's the reason we have you do things like the alphabet. Let's say you're fearful. Everybody do the letter of the alphabet. And we wanted it at 10. It's not because we think that's like fabulous acting. It's because we want you to keep that up there, and then you don't have to do it in volume. You do it in intensity. And there's nothing quite like it when it kicks in on stage. It's so great. When you're committed, things come to you. You don't have to think of them. The character does all the thinking for you.
I love just how you can play so much, and just that just brought me back to like just the walk around exercises and bringing it like you're doing it from like a 6 to a 10. And I just remember doing something like so silly and out of my body that I was like, I can't believe I'm doing, you know what I mean? But it's just so fun. And it's like, you just have the permission there. Like, I always just felt like I was on my way to go play and and be a kid.
That's what you do naturally as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's great at it until they get on stage.
Right.
And then they go, am I funny? Am I good?
Mm-hmm.
You tell me what 4-year-old kid is wondering how it's going when they're playing.
Right.
Wondering how they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't. Let me ask you something, okay? Because you took classes. What do you think you got out of improv?
For me, let's see. I mean, I think it's like, for me, I know a big thing that I had was just like one of the teachers there, I'll never forget this, in front of the whole class was like, Chelsea, you think you're too cool for school. And it like rocked me. Like I was mortified, but that is something that I like had that I had to shed. So it let me be more open and free and playful. And not care about what other people are thinking. I think that I started doing Groundlings and then I started doing stand-up, and with it just the difference is like you could just play so much more and be so free. I think when you're with other people and like you're under like the silly, it just brought out so much more of like my silly side, and I felt allowed to do it and was given that permission to. Whereas because it was like, this is where you're allowed to do it, so you should be able to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'd say for me that, just like that permission was granted.
You want to be thrown.
Mm-hmm.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
You want Ryan Gall, who's in the main company now at the Groundlings, spectacular improviser. We were in an improv show there together a few months ago, and there was some reference to something in a scene, and later after the show, I said, "Did that throw you?" He said, "No, not at all. I loved it." He said, "But I come here to be thrown."
Great attitude.
Yeah, that's why he's so good. He said, "It's not like you want to stick it to each other on stage. That's like a kind of an end game that people can do. I'm talking about that you want to be open to not knowing what's going to come up. The gray area is something big that it's a big part of improv.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, so much stuff that I learned there I take into my life and like work now. Like when I'm, like today is the important day. Like it doesn't matter what happened before that. Like make this moment the moment. The moment. Like I think about that a lot when I'm writing. Like it doesn't matter about like the other bullshit. Like bring it up to speed. Yeah, I think like that. I don't know. That's like the first thing that came to mind. Yeah,
it's just what matters. I mean, I've seen so many scenes start with "How are you today?" Or you're working at Subway and somebody says, "I like the way you make that sandwich," and I think, who cares? It's not like you have to come up with a big idea. You have to look at each other and say, what does it feel like is happening right now that matters at all? It doesn't have to be the biggest thing in the world. It just has to matter because every moment matters to us.
Yeah. Something I never got to do there, but I want to do, which is what I love to go and watch people do, is just like the ability to just really not give a fuck and just bring it all the way over, just bring the dial over here and just completely just put yourself into it and like surrender. And like, who do you think are some of those performers that come to mind who just can just go for it? And
I think all of them can. I think all of them
and
can.
That's what, like what, I guess.
Abandon you're talking about.
Yes. Where you can feel yourself push past that point when you're still like your brain needs to be completely shut off.
No.
Or not. But do you know what I'm saying? What am I trying to say?
You've got to be out
conscious.
of your head.
Like being conscious about what you're doing.
Yes, self-consciousness doesn't help. What you want to do is surrender.
Yeah.
surrender to the moment, and see what happens. Very hard to do. People pay money to see you.
Exactly.
You owe them something.
Yeah.
This is not about your personal journey. So at that point, you've got that. You've got the other people, but all you have to do is stay in the moment. I tell students a lot, you can't always be on fire, but you can always be a good improviser. Once you know the rules, that's all you have to do. Is you just have to look and listen and respond like you do in real life. And the reason you like to be with certain people is because of what that vibe is when you're together. And that's what you're looking for on stage. How do these two characters vibe?
Yeah. As a teacher, what are some of the things that like right away you'll notice something great in like what are some great things you'll notice in a student? If that makes sense.
Yes, I will. If they're collaborative by nature, if they trust themselves, if they are nervous and doing it anyway.
Just because that's exciting.
Yeah, just because it's like,
There's stakes.
Yeah, and I also feel that they trust me. They just do it anyway. But mainly, it's if they're enjoying each other. That tells me a lot. But of course, if somebody's got a really unusual take on things, a really funny take on things, and of course you notice that.
Who were some of your other students along the way who did you teach Will Ferrell? I thought
In an outside class, I taught Will Ferrell.
Yeah.
And I also was in a cold reading class with Will Ferrell, and yes, I knew there was something really special about him right away. It wasn't the thing that ultimately happened when I first met him. What he ultimately started to do, it just was everything about him. He called to mind Phil Hartman in some ways, who had been in the company with me and who I taught a little bit, but not that he needed to learn anything. But it was, but Will had that Jennifer Coolidge. Let's see, I mentioned Julia, Lisa Kudrow, really funny. I had an intermediate class, and I said, okay, I want you to go on stage as a character. This was each person, and have that character do their 5-character audition for SNL.
Yeah.
And she did a Turkish girl, and all of her characters were Turkish, but they were all different. And it was really funny. And I don't want any pushback on this. She was not making fun of Turkish people.
No, that's funny that she would
very,
choose 5
very
Turkish characters.
It was so funny. and I'm trying to think. I feel terrible because I'm going to forget somebody, and I. That's why when these questions are asked, they make me crazy because I don't want to leave anybody out. But there were so many people. Kathy Griffin. Yeah, a ton of them.
Would you say that you've noticed? Okay, so for example, when you first started, you said like people just wanted to work out, and I think there's always going to be those types of students who really want to do the work. But how just things have changed today, and it might be harsh to say people are lazier, but like with technology and like I think people want like the easy way, or people, maybe better said, some people just want to be famous as opposed to just wanting to do the work, or like how a lot of actors will come and take improv to put it on their resume because they know that matters for commercials and stuff like that. Like, how do you work with that?
Well, the problems with that surface right away. So you work with that when it comes up. I think that there's been some measure of that as far back as I can remember, and it even predates me. If you read anything or hear anything about even old show business, there have always been people who are in a hurry. The difference is now technology, as you said. Also, I think we're living in a culture where you're either a celebrity or you're zero. And nothing in between counts for a lot of people. And I think it's a huge problem. So then there's self-worth issues every time you get up to do anything. So you get up to do an improv, and if you don't do well, which sometimes you're not going to do well, and that's a good thing, because then you learn something and you can do better. You say, this is what I need to work on. But I think that gets in the way of growth. And if people are, I do find that some people are in a hurry. I think some of that comes with the territory of wherever it is you're from, how long you gave yourself, and how old you are.
Or how long your dad gave you.
Yeah, right. How old you are and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's the comparison train that gives you the trouble. Okay.
Has that always been going on? The compare and despair?
Yes. But what happens at the school specifically is sometimes people are asked to repeat a class. Mm-hmm. No harm in that. We have people in the main company who repeated classes. It's kind of a standard thing because you're not going to necessarily master everything in 12 classes, so you take it again. So the only reason we would repeat somebody is because we think it's not going to be in their best interest to go to the next level yet until they correct this A, B, or C thing there. Often, people are fine when they have their conferences and they don't go to the next level yet until they find out somebody else got passed to the next level who they felt they were fill in the blank, funnier than this, than that.
Right.
Now, most of the time, they get it once they've been through a second time and they don't care. But that's the problem. It's comparison. It's hurrying. And I think it's almost unavoidable. I mean, then you hit mid-30s, late 30s, 40s, women especially, then, okay, is it over? Mm-hmm. Is it over? Yeah.
I looked at the camera.
No, you know what I mean? No, I mean, I'm talking about their mindset.
No, absolutely, yeah.
I mean, it's a much better world than when I was coming up.
Yeah.
There were no Allison Jannys. Mm-hmm. What a pity if she hadn't been able to work, and Patricia Clarkson and all these people who kind of fall outside that category of I got a real character face or I'm gorgeous, and not to say they aren't attractive, but you know what I'm talking about. I'm the babe, and so there's that middle ground. Now it's just different, and we have premium TV and there's all this stuff, but still people all along the way.
It's like the ticking clock thing.
Yes, all along the way you can say there's that. It's too late for that. I can't this. I can't that. And I get it. SNL. What's the other show like that to be on? But there are other things, and there will be other things and other shows. Key and Peele is a prime example, but that's not. They didn't keep hiring a company. But I get that. But I think that what you need to do if your interest is in getting really great at what you do, then you keep doing what you do and learning. So it's acting, it's writing, it's improvising, it's you fill in the blank with whatever combinations of things work for you. I don't know one creative person who doesn't do at least two things.
So you don't believe in the spreading yourself too thin?
Oh, I think you can spread yourself too thin.
Yeah.
But I'm not. I mean,
you mean like dual performing?
No, I just mean that people need to express themselves in different ways, and you want to get better at all of them. But I don't mean you want to be doing stand up on Monday and improv on Tuesday, and I'm in a play a Thursday through Sunday, and then Monday mornings I perform at at a hospital.
Yeah, like that's
it's you want to be working on your stuff, and you want to be living life, so you have something to put into your work.
Totally, yeah, which is something that I feel like a lot of people don't do. Is that they'll lose that sight and they'll get too focused on like making entertainment everything, and then they have nothing to talk about.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And well, that's another thing going on now.
Yeah.
Endless talk about themselves.
Yeah. Oh. Mm-hmm.
Selfies. Social media. Endless focus on yourself, and then not enough. There's not enough attention you can get.
Yeah. I remember you talking about how you would love to go people watch and how I forgot where you were, I think at like a Starbucks, and you watched the way
The chapstick.
the chapsticks, that just stuck with me. And I love people watching, and I love the emphasis that the Groundlings puts on people watching to take from the outside world. And to me, I just connect that because it's being, less selfless.
Yeah. Also, notice people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what's the point of being in the world? Notice things, notice people, have a take on it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying go see somebody and then just make fun of them endlessly. I don't mean that.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you take from them that gives you something?
Yeah. So what are ways that you guys suggest for people to build their characters or get inspired from the outside world?
Well, different teachers say different things because it's what they focus on. I often say just pay attention to what has your attention. Because you usually just let it fly by. Who are you paying attention to? What kind of people mesmerize you positively or negatively? What kind of people, catch your eyes and ears? I had somebody at a car wash next to me one day, and it's one of those days where it was one of those days that was nondescript until this moment, right? So getting my car washed, and this young woman. What I remember about her, she had really beautiful hair, beautiful, flowing, great hair. I wouldn't know her face if I saw it. This was a long time ago. But she got on her phone, and she said, "Hello, Jasmine." That was her voice. "This is Crystal. Are you hungry or thirsty? I want to go out and get something to eat." She says, when are you getting off work?" "Oh, I will be so drunk by then." So I heard that and I said, okay. And I started listening. And I mean, there was one after the other, after the other, after the other. And if you had to explain, if you asked me to explain what it was about her, I couldn't put it into words. But I just had it after that. I just had the sense of it. I had the sense of somebody calling people endlessly.
Oh,
to see
did
if
she make
somebody
multiple
wanted
calls?
To go. No, I had that sense.
Oh, yeah.
It
Very
was just
funny.
So you make these assumptions. You just make a character based on that. I don't know anything. Well, I know a little about her because I heard her talking to different people. Her first line was, "I just got back from New York. What a shithole." That was the first thing she said. That's what made my ears perk up. So it was great. And then there was a punchline to it because after all this stuff, the guy working at the car wash came in with the keys. He said, "Who has the BMW?" It was just perfect.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and to putting the phone down to see those moments, because it's like people are so immersed in their phone and their day and themselves and all of that. So it's like, I feel like those moments are getting more and more missed. Unless you're,
life, breathing and taking in life is getting missed.
Yeah.
And people are recording instead of having an experience. My husband and I went to the Van Gogh immersion exhibit. So they've got all of his paintings animated slowly on the wall with music playing. And they did put great music to it. There are 2 rooms, and you could sit on benches. They gave everybody a cushion. You could sit on the floor. I was sitting there, and 2 young women were taking pictures of each other the whole time, handing their phones back and forth in front of the paintings as they changed, not watching any of it.
Yeah.
I thought,
it's crazy.
What are you here for? Just to tell people you were here?
Yeah. That's like people, with their phones out at the entire concert.
I had to go into the other room because at first it was really highly amusing.
Yeah.
And then it was so irritating. I couldn't watch because they were right in front of me, posing. And stuff.
Yeah.
It was.
My family, we all rented a boat, like a Duffy in Newport Beach yesterday. And my mom, it was an 8-person boat, 6 of us, which is still very crowded. And she kept wanting us to move around to different spots so each couple could get the golden light. And I had to be like, "Mom, stop." Like, we just want to sit on the boat. Like, we just want to look at the water. Like, we don't want to keep moving around playing musical chairs to get the shot. And it was funny because it was my mom, but as opposed to a young girl. But yeah, totally. It's like losing sight of being in the moment.
there's no monopoly on it by younger people. It's just, but it's one of those times when I think people just don't want to be with their own thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that's a good point. Or if they're anxious, trying to like attach onto something else. So what are the other ways that people can build characters?
Well, there are so many.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you have to be interested in it, interested in people, curious about people, saying, why would somebody, and then fill in the blank. Who does that? I'm always saying that all the time.
Yeah. What kind of person
What
is
kind
that
of
going to be?
person does that? And then you answer that question. And you don't have to be right about them. You're not violating them. You're just making something up, and then it feels right to you or translates or doesn't when you show it to people.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that it's important to work from the outside in or the inside out? Does it?
I think it's got to get on the inside, whether it starts there or it gets there later. I think sometimes outside in is fine. You can grab somebody can hand you a hat, and then you put the hat on, and suddenly you become somebody. But I think if you don't become somebody with something going on inside, you don't have a character. You have a caricature.
That's why I love like an exercise of being like, make a noise, and you're like, and then it's like, and then you start to like embody that.
It's because it's coming from inside you. So you get a noise like and then I've got a voice out of that. Okay, and it's not just the voice, but it's like, who does that feel like? And already I feel like I've had like 40 years of sun with no sunblock. That's what it feels like to me. And I stopped smoking 2 weeks ago, and and I think I'm on top of it. You get in there, and it's like, what does that feel like? Trust your gut.
And then you build from there. Are you starting to add in, how do they walk? How does
the whole thing feel?
Yeah.
How does this whole person feel? Who is this? And the more that you ask yourself on the outside, the less you're inside. I don't mean don't ask questions about the character, but what does it feel like? And everybody has a different. Everybody has his own or her own way of locking it in. I worked with an actor once on a short-lived TV series who said that every time, she's not an improviser, but every time she gets a role, she gives her character a different scent. She asks, what scent does my character wear? What do they smell like? And it really works for her. And she's very good. So it was interesting. For me, sometimes I'll have a line that I've written for a character or improvised, and once I have that line, I know who they are for the rest of my life.
Wow.
And but there's not one way, and there's not one preferred way, and there's no formula.
Yeah. I feel like for me, like if I was thinking like, oh, I'm going to do like a character, I think a lot of people I would imagine would start like, oh, okay, they're going to walk a certain way. They're going to be like, Rrr. But then it's like there's still that disconnect feeling. And I guess it's because like that inside part is missing.
We got to know, like know how they feel about things.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting because it's like you're like playing your imitation of a person instead of playing.
Well, the Groundlings really pushes point of view. And we teach it differently, but we recognize it the same. I don't mean the Groundlings teaches it differently.
Yeah.
Within the Groundlings, everybody's got their own take on it, but we all see it the same way. To get there, how do you see the world? What is? Where is this person coming from? And again, it answers that question: who does that and why?
Yeah. How would you describe your teaching style?
Oh, I wouldn't. You have to ask my students. I don't know. I think I'm nurturing but firm. But I don't know that I have a style of teaching.
Yeah.
I know that I'm pretty passionate about it, that's for sure. And I love it, and I want people to get to that place that I get to when it's really working.
Yeah. How can you really push someone to be more free and open and silly and not care?
You can't push someone to do it.
Damn it.
But you can keep. Well, that's why there are so many different exercises. You keep opening different doors they can walk through and see what works for them. But I think encouraging people and letting them know it's okay and that it's safe. I think often when they just get used to working together, and you'll be in the same group for 12 classes, you get comfortable with each other. Every so often, I'll get to just see it happen. I'll just see somebody release, and I don't know why then and not the class before or 5 minutes before. But you can't push somebody to relax or you can just, I think you can help them there gradually. That's what you can do, gradually. And point it out in the moments they've let go. Often we'll ask people after they've done a scene, how'd that feel? How'd that feel? Tell us.
Yeah.
And then somebody will say, I was in my head. Why? Why do you think? And sometimes I can tell. I don't know unless they tell me, but I get the sense with some people sometimes, excuse me, they're going through something today. I can feel it. I can see it. Something else is going on. And so for some people, that'll get in the way of the whole class. And for other people, being class will help them open up and forget about it for a while.
Yeah. I bet that's so cool to get to see. Like for me, like being in a class and then you see like every class, I feel like, of course, like everyone's doing great. But like, you always see like a couple special or like,
right.
I'm trying to say this in the nicest way, but it's so fun to get to see like, oh, wow, like I want to like watch this person throughout the track and
right.
just see where they go. Or like you always see that person who's like, there's something special about them. Like, what do you think that is? Or even just like as a performer, and I might have already asked this question, but like, for me, like I'll see like an up and coming stand up or something, and it's like they just have something, and you always want to put like a description on it. Sometimes you can't, but what do you think that is in a performer?
Well, I don't think it's one thing. I think for some people, there's a certain confidence level that allows them to access without editing or beating themselves up or second guessing. So they're wonderfully in that moment, even whatever they're doing, whether it's stand up or even acting. Mm-hmm. I look at somebody like Olivia Colman as an actor. I mean, I've often said I could watch her watch paint dry. I don't know how confident she is or not. But if she's not confident, then I don't feel so bad about it. But I just see her do things that if you blinked, you'd have missed what she just did, and it was amazing. So, but I think confidence is one thing. I also think there is a combination of things that people have. I mean, sometimes it's what they look like. Sometimes they just have $1 million face, and it blends really well with the personality. But I think openness, abandon your take on things, and I think the more authentically you can be with a sense of humor about yourself, the better.
Mm-hmm. And do you think, I know some people have all of that off the bat, but do you think all that is learnable? I don't know if is it teachable or is it something you do on your own?
I can't teach someone to be special.
Right.
I can notice what's I think is special and nurture that, bring that out. There was a time decades ago when I thought you either kind of had it or you didn't. And then I started to see people click in.
Right.
Just click in where you say, I never saw this before. Somebody who didn't have an original thought is suddenly hilariously funny on a regular basis. They're not imitating anybody. It's rare, but I've seen it. I don't give up on anybody ever. I think when you were talking earlier about some people do this because they want it on their resume, that's different.
Yeah.
But I think if somebody's coming in and they want to be an actor, they want to be a writer, they're wired for it somewhere, and there's something in there that I think they need to nurture. Even if they're not great actors, they may turn into great writers. They may turn into, they may have some other value there. They may even wind up on the business side of things, but so helpful to understand the mind of the creative person. You just never know. But I believe you have to honor your wiring.
How can you nurture and honor your creativity?
Keep doing it.
Yeah.
But don't decide how it has to work out, because you're not in control of that. I mean, there are people, I won't name names, not Groundlings people, but people who are huge stars. And I remember seeing them in things when they first started, and they were, I'm going to say, terrible. I'm going to go ahead and say that, and got wonderful and just got to learn on camera. How lucky for them, how lucky for them. And then there are other people who worked really hard and are great, and the breaks didn't come. Things here and there. I don't get how the world works.
Right. Yeah.
I don't have the answer for that.
Do you know who Sebastian Maniscalco is?
I don't.
He's very funny stand-up, but there's like the story, everyone loves like the story of how like he was always terrible, and then he had like one show where like everything just clicked, and he's a huge star today, but it just reminded me of him and the story that like everyone continuously tells here, that it's like you don't know who, and everyone was like, dude, you suck, quit. And now he's, sells out Madison Square Garden, incredibly hilarious, very open. He goes by Sebastian. Very funny guy, Italian guy from Chicago, actually.
Did he do the Jerry Seinfeld comedian?
Yeah, he did.
Okay, I saw it.
Yeah.
All right, now I remember who he was.
Yeah. But he just instantly comes to mind, like in that way of like someone who just pushed through everyone's expectations.
Yeah, it's in there. I've had people say to me, it's in there. There's something, and I'll see it in them. You're holding something back, or something in there. And I've had a measure of that myself. Some things just took increments to work out, and then one day you're saying, "Oh my God, I'm flying. I'm flying."
I love that. Yeah, sometimes it just clicks. Awesome. Thank you so much, Phyllis, for coming on. So good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.